Michael Knowles says that the political left are using language in an insidious way to reshape society. And he says that when you control words, you control minds. And conservatives are losing the battle for free speech. I want you to welcome to the show the author of a very remarkable book that I highly recommend. It's called Speechless. It's his first book with words. I'll explain that in a minute. He's the host of the Michael Knowles Show at the Daily Wire. Would you please welcome Michael Knowles? So, Michael, I guess I got to explain, it's your second book. The first one had to have been the easiest book anyone ever wrote.
Well, you see, Governor, I had spent my entire life researching that book, and I put about 27 years into it. I had an extensive bibliography, took about 10 seconds to write, and then we published it.
It was hilarious. It was 200 and something pages. The title of the book, give us that.
The title is Reasons to Vote for Democrats, A Comprehensive Guide.
And it was 200 and something blank pages. I remember when it came out, it was brilliant, and I thought, this is great.
I learned a lesson, by the way,
yes.
now that I've done a book with words.
Yes.
Much better to write the first kind of book. This is too much time, but I did think it would be ironic and very important if you write a book without any words. The next book should be entirely about words and how the left uses words to totally take over our culture.
Well, I want you to know you nailed it with this book. You and I talked on my podcast, and I was so grateful to have that conversation because I told you then, I think this book is a seminal work of explaining what is happening to the free speech movement in this country. So where did it happen that America lost its will to let people practice the First Amendment?
Well, I really appreciate your view of the book because there has been a big problem among some conservatives where they totally ignore cultural issues. They wake up in a cold sweat in the middle of the night thinking about, I don't know, marginal tax rates or something. That's it, they're not. And you have been such a leader on the cultural fight. And unfortunately, I find that political correctness lays a trap for conservatives. We've been fighting against this thing for 30 years now?
Yeah.
And in my book, I argue it actually goes back about 100 years. And the trap is this. We now think that political correctness is a fight between free speech and censorship. I don't think it's really that. I think political correctness sets out simply to destroy the traditional standards of society. And so there are usually two ways conservatives react. Either you have the I'll be polite, but the squishes, the squishes give in to the new standards and use the new speech codes. And so obviously that advances political correctness. But then on the other hand, you have the more stalwart conservatives who say they're, free speech absolutists. And they abandon standards entirely. They say whatever you want, do whatever you want, no standard at all. Either way, the traditional standards are abandoned. And because nature abhors a vacuum, the left's new perverse standards fill in their place. So no matter what you do, you end up losing ground in the culture war.
And so many people, as you say, have said, well, let's sort of live and let live. That's not the message that you think saves America.
Well, it's just impossible. I mean, words exist to discriminate one thing from another thing. So they're obviously exclusive. Now in this country, we can't even agree that a man is not a woman. I mean, that is how confused we've become. But your point on marriage is such a good one, because people will sometimes bring up the same-sex marriage debate. And I say, first of all, I don't think there ever was any debate. I don't remember. I remember Anthony Kennedy writing romantic poetry from the Supreme Court and radically redefining marriage. But if you really believe that marriage has nothing to do with sexual difference, I suppose we can have that debate. What the politically correct radicals did, though, what these wordsmiths did, is they presumed their own conclusion. They began the debate and they said, look, even though for a zillion years everywhere in the world, everyone thinks that sexual difference has something to do with marriage. We no longer think that. We're now defining marriage as not having to do with sexual difference, and we're going to debate who has the right to get married. And you say, well, if the debate is over rights, you've already won, but that's not the question. The question is, what are we really talking about? And so it's not even just a censorship after the fact. What they have done through political correctness is exert a kind of pre-censorship that already shapes the views before we can speak them.
It is alarming to me how all of this has accelerated in such a rapid period of time. And you mentioned the idea that a man, as one recently just went into a spa and said he was a woman, yet he was physically and anatomically a man, and a woman complained, and she was the one that everybody was mad at.
Right.
What's going on?
And it's gone all the way up to the Supreme Court. There was just a case that was brought because a boy wanted to go into a girl's bathroom, right? Girls want to go into the boys' bathroom, though at lesser numbers.
Yeah.
And this goes up to the Supreme Court, and there were two justices, God bless, Clarence Thomas and Sam Alito. These wonderful, originalist,
Absolutely.
conservative judges. They were the only two judges who did not go along with the argument that there is a constitutional right for men to go into the women's bathroom. All of the other judges, the liberals, but even the professed originalists, Amy Barrett, John Roberts, he's a completely lost cause, and Brett Kavanaugh, they all went along with this argument. And I thought, where is the right of men to go into the women's bathroom? It's in the emanations and the penumbras. It's next to the imaginary right to abortion. It's just completely fictitious. And so if even the originalists, the people who are supposed to care about what the words mean, if even they succumb to the pressure of the politically correct left that tries to redefine reality by redefining all the words, then we're really in a bad position. And I think if we as conservatives do not offer a substantive vision of politics, say there actually are limits, the words actually do have meaning, there's right and wrong and true and false, and we're going to actually embrace that, then we're only going to keep losing ground.
That is so powerful, and it is the message of Michael Knowles' book. I really do hope that if you're trying to understand what's happening in our culture, you'll get a copy of this because it will help you. And I want to say thanks to Michael for being here. The book, Speechless, Controlling Words, Controlling Minds. You can get a copy anywhere books are sold, and I do suggest that you purchase it, not steal it. That wouldn't be a very nice thing to do. By the way, you can also watch The Michael Knowles Show on dailywire.com. Listen to the show wherever you download your podcast.